Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So about a week ago one of my subscribers asked me for a list such as this, and I initially was maybe somewhat skeptical about making it because I thought, how difficult can it be, but eventually I figured out it can't hurt either, and perhaps there is a group of people that this video will be somewhat helpful. And here we are going to be talking about how much Mystic Dispersion is needed for specific Mystic champions. And we have 4 different categories. In category number 4, we have champions nobody gives a shit anyways. We have your Iron Fists and Juggernauts and so on and so forth. They are not going to be the champions that guide your decision to rename. I don't know why I wrote rename. That is meant to be immortal. These are not going to be the champions that guide your decision to put on Mystic Dispersion or not. However, the rest of them, might. And in the first category there, we have where Mystic Dispersion is not really needed. Obviously, there are matchups that Mystic Dispersion can be helpful to every single Mystic champion. There will be those matchups, 100%. And that's true. Mystic Dispersion can be helpful even to, let's say, Sasquatch. Even though Sasquatch barely has any nullify abilities, he has stagger on heavy attack that nobody hardly ever uses. But if you go up against a champion that has buffs or nodes that place buffs that do expire by themselves, you could find it helpful. Similar with Guillotine. Guillotine has 0 nullification abilities, but Mystic Dispersion still can happen to be helpful. But also at the same time, these are all champions that you can bring in fights where opponents do not get any buffs at all whatsoever, and you're going to be doing just fine, and it's not going to be the biggest deal. Therefore, Mystic Dispersion is kind of an optional extra. It doesn't significantly, change anything in how those champions function. Then we have the second group where I write it down as situational, because all of the champions in the second group can function and do function without Mystic Dispersion or without opponents having buffs, but then they can function differently and undeniably better if opponents do have buffs and if you do have Mystic Dispersion. Kind of like with Diablo, Diablo's super regeneration champion with tons of poison. But if you know that opponent's going to have a lot of buffs, you activate one of the pre-fights, which gives you the nullify ability every 2 seconds. And you can just have much quicker, much more aggressive fight with Diablo, and Diablo becomes better as a champion. Similar to Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom can put champions in Doom cycle, even if they don't have any buffs. And, he works perfectly fine. However, if opponent does have a lot of buffs, it sure as hell makes a job for Dr. Doom a lot easier. And that's kind of the case for all of these champions, where they are all perfectly capable to perform without buffs, without Mystic Dispersion. But then, if opponents do have buffs, and if you do have Mystic Dispersion active, you get significantly more powerful version of those champions. And now we have the last group of hugely dependent, and that is the group that Mystic Dispersion is kind of pretty much like a must, where you have 2 completely different versions of these champions, kind of like Omega Red with and without suicides, or Corvus without suicides, if not even more. I would say even more, because like Dr. Voodoo without Mystic Dispersion is just the empty shell of a champion compared to how he is with Mystic Dispersion. Same thing with Man-Thing and Mojo and Scarlet Witch, because they give opponents buffs in every fight. With Symbiote Supreme, it's a bit different, because Symbiote Supreme is typically a champion that you wouldn't use in the first place unless opponent has buffs, and due to the way Symbiote Supreme gains power, you really do want that Mystic Dispersion or Mystic Power Boost. But when it comes to the bottom 4 champions, Dr. Voodoo, Man-Thing, Mojo, and Scarlet Witch Sigil, all 4 of these champions give every single opponent buffs from their own kit. Therefore, they will have access to Mystic Dispersion in every single fight, and Mystic Dispersion completely and drastically transforms the way you can play those champions. Especially evident with Scarlet Witch Sigil and Man-Thing, I would say, but definitely also there with Mojo and Dr. Voodoo, where the entire idea of your kit is to place buffs on opponent, then nullify them or let them expire, gain ton of power, and start special spamming. And that's just how they work. And they are, well, in my opinion, created and designed with Mystic Dispersion in mind. And so that is more or less how I kind of categorize champions by their, well, necessity for Mystic Dispersion. As in, like, we have more generic Mystic champions that don't really need it at all for most part. Then we have champions that can work fantastic with and or without it, pending the fights, pending the circumstances, but obviously having it is still significantly beneficial. And then we have champions that you don't really want to rank up or use unless you do have Mystic Dispersion unlocked. When it comes to the level of Mystic Dispersion, because I hear a lot of people ask me the same question quite often as well, I always say, for me personally, it's kind of 5 or nothing. Well, whenever I run Mystic Dispersion, I either run 5 points in Mystic Dispersion or 0 points in Mystic Dispersion, unless you are fine-tuning Mystic Dispersion for a specific interaction. Like, for instance, if you were to use Morningstar against 6.2 champion boss, you don't really want 5 points in Mystic Dispersion. You want like 2 or 3 points just to be able to line up those level 2s better. And it's kind of similar if you're going to be using either Morningstar or somebody against, I don't know, Abyss, Venom the Duck, or something like that. But in general, in kind of standard circumstances, I always say 5 points in Mystic Dispersion is what I run. And the reasoning for that is actually very, very simple. If I'm going to be going up against a champion that has a ton of buffs with the Mystic champion, I'm going to be having an easy time. Yes, maybe at some point I will push myself to level 3, but all in all, I'm still going to absolutely destroy that opponent, even if I occasionally accidentally push myself to level 3. But the fact of the matter is that there are not that many matchups and that many fights where opponents just randomly start spamming buffs like nobody's business. Most of the time when you use Mystic champions and opponents do have buffs, they gain like 1-2 buffs at a time, and that's about it. In which case, the power gain difference is absolutely huge. It goes from 8% to 12%, and you can notice very, very significant difference. And those are the matchups that MD5 helps you the most. Not when opponent has 10 or 15 buffs. Then it doesn't really matter. Yeah, of course, you know, MD4, MD5, whatever. But whenever opponent has like 1, 2, or 3 buffs, then it's a huge, huge difference. Like a good example, for instance, is, you know, all the tech champions that gain armor up, and if you nullify, they regain it after a while. So they don't necessarily have a lot of buffs, but if you have MD5, it's still quite a significant amount of power gain that you will be getting by just consistently nullifying that armor up. So personally, when it comes to MD5, in all my mastery setups, I either run 5 points in MD5 or I don't run any at all. And as a side note, most of the people who say MD5 is excessive, as in like 5 points in Mystic Dispersion is too much, there's absolutely no need for it. In my personal experience, have been the people who do not have MD5 unlocked in the first place. But again, if you have a different opinion, that's perfectly fine. However, it's my channel and my opinion. Right, so this is the list. Hopefully it's helpful. And yeah, if you're asking about the level of Mystic Dispersion, for me, at the very least, pretty much always MD5. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So
So we have all the information about the